Today we're going to talk about how you can manage not just vSphere, but everything in your data center all in one place using vRealize Operations Insight. My name is Himanshu Singh. I do product marketing for our operations management portfolio, and I'm joined by Hisham Murad, my technical marketing counterpart and super rockstar. And you'll get to know the rockstar part very shortly. Let's get started. Here's the standard disclaimer that you would have seen already a few times yesterday and today. So anything you see, you cannot hold us accountable to it. We'll say whatever we want, and nothing sticks to us. Basically, that's the idea. All right.
That's essentially so if we mess up, we're good.
Yeah, because some features will change over time before things get released. So this is just to give you an idea. A quick structure of what the agenda is going to look like. We'll start with, we all know IT is awesome. We're not trying to figure out how IT can become even more awesome. We'll get into what is vROI. They will talk about what exactly are the capabilities and features and what can you do with it. We'll get into the demo that we've been trying to set that whole environment up, and then we'll finish with some next steps. So, quick show of hands before we get started. How many of you here identify with the fact that expectations from the business are outpacing the ability of IT to deliver projects? Show of hands. That's like more than half. All right. How many of you have had flat or reducing IT budgets? A little more than half. All right. So that's basically the new reality, right? IT is always being pressured to do more with less. And so what you need is something that's a game-changing technology that can actually, help you transform yourself, help you basically bridge that gap and be able to deliver at the speed the business operates. So, you could think about this as a problem to solve, or you could think about this as an opportunity, right? And so the way I would characterize this opportunity would be kind of in a three-pronged way. You want to make sure that you can provide solutions at the speed of business. You want to be able to be more flexible as to what the business needs, be able to provision things and manage and deliver services faster, right? You also want to move from being reactive and solving problems that just happened to being proactive and actually avoiding those issues, right? So you can ensure the availability of your applications and infrastructure is much better. And the third thing is about truly moving from just being a cost center to actually being a strategic partner to the business. So you move beyond things like just operational efficiencies, and you're actually focusing on how do I actually deliver value to the business? How do I help business deliver better, right? So that's kind of the basic lay of the land. And the next thing I want to talk about is how do you actually do those things, right? What do you need to fuel that transformation, essentially? In order to match the speed of the business, you have to start with a platform which gives you the right kind of infrastructure platform, which is built for the hybrid cloud, the mobile cloud era that we actually live in. On top of that, you need to add a consistent management capability so that your virtualized data center becomes more efficient. And the third thing is about making sure that you are optimizing everything in your environment, right? People and things. The second thing about moving from being reactive to proactive, that's all about focusing on improving performance and efficiency, reducing downtimes and those kind of things. And what you need is a tool that gives you not just symptomatic alerts, right? Not just what's up, what's down, but actually meaningful insights that you can take action on. And it is able to look at your entire environment as a whole and give you recommendations, factoring everything in. And thirdly, you want to make sure that you have better visibility into your applications and their dependencies on the underlying infrastructure. This becomes very important when you start thinking about a disaster recovery scenario, right? You want to make sure that what's dependent on what so you can recover faster. Or when you start thinking about infrastructure moving, what applications does it affect? So you can actually avoid problems, or if actually problems do occur, you can actually recover much faster. The third thing is about becoming that strategic partner to the business. And you have to start by moving from doing repetitive manual tasks to actually safely automating them. And when I say safely automating, I mean making sure that the tool is not going willy-nilly, making changes on its own without you knowing. IT needs to be in control because you know your environment best. And so you need to make sure that the tool is automating things, improving efficiency for you, but at the same time, you are in control. You're the one making decisions. You also want to make sure that in order to deliver those application SLAs that you require, you are looking at placement and balancing of your workloads and your environment as a whole. And we'll definitely get into that today as well. And the last thing is all about making sure that you have a more standardized environment. You avoid things like configuration drift. You are compliant with any kind of IT standards, security hardening guidelines, and such. Right? So that's kind of the wish list of things that you need. Let's take a look at a quick reality of what customers like yourselves tell us, right? And quick show of hands again. How many of you are in VI administration capacity? A lot, right? Storage admin, network. Oh yeah. So, and the interesting thing I saw was that it was some people who raised their hands multiple times, but most of the time it's all kind of different people doing different things, right? And what that means is that you typically have an environment where you've got a bunch of different pieces of infrastructure. Everybody's got their monitoring tools. It's all generating a whole bunch of data, and all the data is coming to you. It becomes a lot. It becomes an overload, and you start ignoring things because it's just not possible to be able to go through every single alert that you get. Now, when you have an actual problem, you get this whole storm of alerts. Red, green, yellow, all sorts of colors come to you. What's up, what's down, this is 90%, this is 80%. It's all symptomatic alerts. It doesn't really tell you what is wrong with your environment as such, right? Now, so you basically get all the teams together. Everybody's looking at their own screen and trying to figure out the problem, but you don't have a single source of truth. What that means is that everybody's pointing fingers, right? The network guys often escape because you can't trace that packet anymore. The storage guys get stuck because everything is stored for eternity and all the evidence is right there. And at the same time, while all this finger pointing is happening, the business is suffering, right? Your end users are still complaining. So you're trying to basically make this problem go away somehow. Not necessarily solve the problem, make it go away. And so you're thinking, well, what have I learned from managing physical resources? And that's, if I have enough resources, I shouldn't have a problem, right? So you go and do over-provisioning. And that basically defeats the whole purpose of going to virtualization in the first place. And it perpetrates that vicious cycle all over again. So we need to break that. We need that solution that's going to help us, break that cycle. So if you really boil it down in terms of key operational things that are challenges that customers like yourselves are facing, it comes down to things like downtime and performance degradation, things like facing the cost cutting and reduced budgets, as we talked about earlier, and things like siloed operations where you don't have that single source of truth to kind of look at, for everybody to look at, right? Now, from a technology perspective, when you start thinking about operational analytics, there's kind of 5 areas you need to focus on, right? You have to start with the core, health and performance of your infrastructure. Then you have to think about how you're using your capacity in the best way possible. Is it the best, most efficient use of your capacity? You have to think about configuration health and making sure that you are compliant with things and you don't have configuration drift, for example, in your environment. When you look at your topology overall, you have to look at it all together, right? A tool that can do it all together versus having a piecemeal view, right? And then the 5th thing, which a lot of organizations don't really spend enough emphasis on, is the leveraging unstructured data. This is all the logs and messages that's in your environment that has a ton of insights, but doesn't really get used in the right way. So we need to make sure that we're looking at all these 5 things together. So in order to do that, what we have is something called vRealize Operations Insight, or vROI. Now, what it is it's an add-on to vSOM. vSOM is vSphere with Operations Management, and it is a bundle of vRealize Operations Advanced and vRealize LogInsight. How many of you have used VROps or VCOps? Perfect, awesome. LogInsight? A little less, yeah, a lot less, I guess. But so the good thing is that a lot of you can know a little bit more about LogInsight today as well. So think about your typical environment, right? You've got your basic infrastructure layer, you've got virtualization layer on top, applications running. All this is generating a whole bunch of data, right? So you've got structured and unstructured data. Structured data is where vRealize Operations comes in. It does the whole capacity, performance, configuration, compliance management for you. On the unstructured data side, this is where LogInsight is a key player, right? All that logs and messages coming in, LogInsight can convert all that unstructured data in a single click to structured data so that you can do querying and search and analysis on all that data. And VROps and LogInsight work really well together. So let's say you are in LogInsight, you can basically send alerts and events on specific objects or whatever, and to vRealize operations, so that when VROps still becomes that single screen that you're always looking at, right? All that automated correlation, when that happens, the alerts from LogInsight are factored in. And then conversely, let's say you're in vRops and you're looking at a particular alert, you're trying to figure out what's going on over there, and you can open LogInsight in context to see all the logs for that particular object and quickly go and find that needle in the haystack. Now, one thing I mentioned was with vROI, you can manage everything, right, in your environment. You've got more than vSphere. So in order to be able to connect all the different tools and technologies that you have in your data center, what we give you are these extensions called management packs. And management packs are either created by VMware, which are free, created by our OEM partners. If you've got Cisco UCS, you've got EMC, Dell, NetApp, storage, et cetera. So you can basically get these management packs, connect whatever is in environment to vROI, and then basically you got everything managed as a first-class citizen, right? It's not VMware versus non-VMware technologies. Everything gets managed as a first-class citizen, and that makes a big difference, of course. And you can go to VMware Solutions Exchange online to be able to learn more about all these technologies. This is a very small list, of course. I think there's like 80 to 100 different technologies covered, so you can really figure out what you have gets covered here or not, right? So really, the idea behind vROI is to give you that comprehensive solution that leverages all the structured and unstructured data in your environment, does the self-learning, basically understands what's going on in your environment. It's not a peanut butter approach. It's not one size fits all at all. And so it's all customized to what your environment is all about, right? And that kind of helps us differentiate against what's out there otherwise. From some numbers perspective, there's a bunch of benefits that would make sense, especially if you're trying to make a case up your management chain. Think about the improvement in terms of downtimes, being able to have more visibility into your environment, things of that nature. But also, from a financial perspective, there's 2.4x return on investment. The fun thing is, of course, the product is called vROI, and we're talking about the ROI it provides, and which is actually phenomenal. Within 12 months, customers are getting 2.4x return on the investment they made on this tool. So that's just fantastic. I think within 90 days, about more than 80% or so customers report 1x return, so which is pretty fast. So you basically get value from the get-go. What I want to do is quickly go through some of the stuff that's coming up in vROI 6.1. That's coming up in Q3, and then we'll have Hisham come over and talk about the actual stuff that you came here for. Right? So the key thing about the new release with vROI is all about intelligent workload management. We've got something called workload balancing, and essentially the idea there is, if you look at your typical environment, workloads are placed generally, in many cases, suboptimally. So you're not really making use of your clusters and your capacity in the most efficient way. So we provide this capacity utilization dashboard that really has this kind of a three-pronged view, three-column view of your environment, and Hisham will definitely go into more detail there. The idea being that we show you what's underutilized, what's overutilized, what's kind of in the green zone, basically, what's kind of already balanced, and then it gives you this balancing plan to be able to actually figure out what you need to move and where, so that you have a much more balanced and more efficient kind of environment. The other thing I want to talk about is remember I mentioned earlier about having those multiple tools to work with, and we're trying to basically get away from that. And this is a step in that direction that we are now introducing integrated OS monitoring in vRealize operations natively. So that makes it a much more streamlined kind of usage experience, and you don't have to go and look at use Hyperic, for example, separately. Of course, I'm a marketing guy, and so I'm gonna put some pictures in front of you. If you like them, great. If you don't like them, well, I'm still gonna do it. So imagine this is your data center, right? I mean, imagine a library which just gets messy over time. And so the idea is that you've got that librarian who's going to help you be more organized, be more efficient, put things in the right place. And when we talk about, you can have multiple tools. You can put a whole bunch of wristwatches on your wrist. All you'll know is time, right? Instead, what you need is a solution, something like an Apple Watch, which gives you, that one tool to work with, one screen to look at. It monitors all the right metrics, which is key, and then it gives you the insight that you need to actually take action on, right? So that's kind of the idea here. Let's get into more of the details, figure out really what's inside and what you can do with it, and I'm going to have Hisham come over and give you more details about that.
Excellent.
You're up, buddy.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody, or good afternoon, depending on what time it is now. I don't know what time it is. Anyways, my name is Hisham Murad. I'm actually with the Technical Marketing and Management Service Business Unit. I'm actually from Canada, but I report into the BU. So at some point in this discussion, you'll undoubtedly say, oh yeah, I heard it, there it is. You know, he said A or something like that, or a boot or whatever. So let's get started. I want to give you some more details around vROI. What are the different solutions part of the vROI suite, but also jump into some additional detail. I do recognize that some people have already used VROps, so I saw a show of hands earlier, but there are some hands that didn't go up. So I want to talk about some of the features that we introduced in 6.0, but also introduce you to some of the features in 6.1 that Himanshu just talked about. And so I'll give you a little bit more detail around that, and hopefully we'll be able to get to some live demo. Now, for those of you in the back, there are a lot of empty seats up here. Once we get to the demo, you're going to really be straining your eyes. So if you can, feel free to come on up. Let us feel the love. All right, so let's jump right in. With vRealize Operations 6, we actually introduced a new UI, right? You guys remember, for those of you who used previous versions, vSphere UI, and then we had a custom UI for third-party solution integration, right? Now, single UI, you know, every object is a first-class citizen, as Himanshu said, and we have the management pack framework, right? Where we have a ton of different management packs that allow you to integrate third-party solutions right into vRealize Operations and take advantage of the analytics engine in vRops. So new, cool, enhanced UI, ability to integrate further. We used to be a vApp, which was only 2 VMs. You installed the vApp, 2 VMs. You couldn't really scale out. You could only scale up. We moved into a cluster model with vRealize Operations 6, so now you can actually add up to 8 nodes within your cluster. So you have one master, and then you have all these other data nodes, et cetera. You can also have remote collector nodes, right? So actually from a scalability and resilience, we've enhanced the platform. And with 6.1, you're going to see some additional new numbers around capacity and around performance as well. I'm going through some of this quickly because I really do want to get to some of the new features and also to some of the demo. But if there are any questions, please don't hesitate to stop and ask me. I love to make it an interactive session if we can. So, all right, so let's talk about alerting and remediation. So we actually introduced a new type of alert framework in vRops 6 where before we actually alerted as soon as we saw symptoms. Now what we do is we actually have alerts that trigger based on one or more symptoms, and you can have conditions in there, and we have cancel cycles and detection cycles. So it's a lot more useful than what we had in the 5X from an alerting perspective, but also a lot more customizable. So you can go in and start to create your own alerts with your own symptoms and own conditions. And we introduced actions. So we made alerts actionable, which I'll demonstrate here very shortly. So when you actually get an alert and you see something like, okay, I'm experiencing CPU stress on this workload, we actually provide you an action button right in that alert detail so you can take that remediative action right from the alert. The idea is, and you'll see when we get to the demo, is that that initial screen you log into is called the recommendations page. As long as you've taken a few moments to customize your default policy and a couple of policies for your environment, for production and test dev and your SAP servers or something like that, right? You've customized your BCA workload policies. You're going to see the recommendations bubble up. So you don't have to go into all the details if you don't want to. You can, but we're trying to simplify all that for you, make that a lot more operationally easy to get to those alerts and act on those alerts right from the main page. We also introduced integrated vSphere compliance. So with 6.0, we integrated the vSphere compliance, so you can actually turn that on very quickly and simply see how your VMs are doing against the vSphere hardening guide and how your hosts are doing against the vSphere hardening guide. Now, we don't have remediation action for those alerts yet, but at least you can see them. And we give you the link to the hardening guide so you can go in and take action against those areas where you're actually violating or failing to meet the vSphere hardening guideline requirements. Now, with vRealize Operation 6, we also heard you loud and clear, because a lot of customers said, hey, we could only do custom dashboards in the custom UI in 5x, but we really want to be able to do this even for vSphere. We want to be able to do it for any type of object, regardless of where it's coming from. So we've actually made significant enhancements for dashboards and views. Dashboards are just simply widgets and views that you can basically insert into the dashboards. So you have the ability to go in and create and customize your own views in addition to what we give you out of the box. And then that allows you to also tailor your dashboards. So for those of you who put your hands up and you said you're storage guys, right? You only want to see the storage environment. Well, create your own custom dashboards. You don't want to see all that other noise, right? The network guys, same type of thing. Maybe install the NSX management pack or some of the other networking management packs, and then boom, you can see the environment. Your EMC storage, NetApp storage, etc. Install those management packs. You have custom dashboards and have the ability to continue to tailor and customize your own in addition to that. Also, one of the things that you should be aware of here is that you can actually report on views today. So you can take a view and actually add it to reports. But in the 6.1 that we just announced yesterday, you're going to actually be able to take dashboards and have your dashboards be part of the reports as well, which actually gives you more flexibility because you already have a ton of dashboards out of the box. You may have created some of your own. Why do you have to rebuild some of those for reports? You just basically say, put it in my report. That's what I want. Right, so those are some of the things that you're going to see in the new release. Now here again, we've customized and enhanced the UI to make it a little bit more flexible. The widgets are going to be a little bit nicer to interpret, nicer to see visually. So there's a lot of new things that we've added here as part of that. So I'm going to jump over that quickly. Being able to this here just kind of showing you how you can take a dashboard and simply drag it right into the report, as I just mentioned a moment ago, and you can set up the layout and put the header and the footer and all that stuff. So really tailor the reports whichever way that you want. Now, a big thing that customers struggle with is capacity management, right? And that includes capacity modeling, capacity forecasting, right? Just getting that reclaimable capacity. So in VROps, we have badges for all those components. So there's 5 badges in VROps that are specific to the capacity, right? One of them is capacity remaining, time remaining, stress, which is an important measurement for capacity, because if you have workloads that are stressed and are stressed often, that typically could indicate that they're potentially undersized. That could apply to a workload, a VM. It could apply to a host. It could apply to a cluster. Those badges we roll up on all the different objects. So you're not restricted to running these type of badges on the VMs themselves. You'll also see them on other objects as well. Okay, but one of the other things that we introduced as part of vRops 6 is projects. And projects allow you to go in and do what-if scenarios and capacity modeling for your environment. Now, one thing I'd like to mention just about the capacity model in vRops 6.x is that we actually made that model consumable even by third-party solutions. So any of the adapters that you install, so let's say you install the NetApp adapter, the EMC adapter, if we have all the appropriate metrics for the capacity metrics that we require, we can actually help you even do capacity management, capacity forecasting, capacity planning around that also. Okay? Projects, which I do want to show you, is being able to simulate, visually see that I have red, which means I have capacity shortfall in my environment, but then being able to go in and model adding capacity within the environment and seeing how much capacity I need. Or looking at my environment and saying, hey, you know, I need to upgrade my SAP application in 2 Mondays from now, and that means we're adding X amount of more servers, so I can go in and actually simulate adding that additional workload demand to the environment and visualizing how that impacts my capacity. And in the 6.1 that we just announced yesterday, you're going to be able to say, reserve that capacity. So what will happen is when you say reserve that capacity, it'll actually update the capacity remaining, the time remaining, the reclaimable capacity. All the capacity-related badges will get impacted by you making that reservation, because you're saying, hey, vRops, set this capacity aside for me. Right? So you're going to be able to do that. And we'll get more into that. Now, with vRops 6.x, we introduced a new user access control, so you can actually log in if you're a vCenter user, but if you're a vCenter user, you'll only get access to the objects that you have in vSphere, only permissions based on your vCenter permissions. If you're an actual local user in vRops, you'll get all the access to all the objects that you've been provided or granted, but you also can do AD integration or Open LDAP integration via LDAP. Okay, and now in the new release, we're also looking to do some SSO integration as well, so there'll be more to come on that here very shortly. Now, one other piece that I found resonated with large customers is application dependency mapping. Because sometimes you go to make a change to a workload in your environment, and then somebody else calls you and say, hey, I got a problem over here, like what the heck's going on? And it's often because you don't know how workloads are communicating or how they're tied together. So Infrastructure Navigator is part of the VROI bundling. And all it is just a virtual appliance that you install, and you point it to your vCenter, and it starts to understand all the dependencies between all the different workloads into your environment and out to one hop to a physical device. But it'll represent that for you. So you'll be able to see that first in the vSphere web client, but also if in vRops, if you go and install the VIN or the Infrastructure Navigator Management Pack, you're able to see that also inside of vRops. And then you can see the different application services that are running on each of these workloads. Okay, so I'm hoping that we'll be able to show some of that here as well. So there's an application, and then these are the workloads that live in the application, and you saw the dependencies, how they're communicating. Okay, so we also have management packs. So Himanshu talked about management packs for vRops. So there's two things that you hear from us typically. If we're talking vRops, you're going to hear management packs. That is our third-party integration. So you go to VMware Solution Exchange, you select vRops management packs, and you're going to see a list, a very large, extensive list of third-party solutions for management packs. Now, I'll get to LogInsight in a moment, and LogInsight, we call them content packs, where we have also third-party integration there, where you collect logs from those environments, you have the dashboards, the alerts, everything in LogInsight as well, and you get that visibility. But here, again, I'm just pointing out that we have management pack for storage devices. We have that third-party extensibility. So, please take a look at VMware Solution Exchange. Here's an example of some of that where you can go in. More examples around EMC, NetApp, HP, Dell, Brocade, Cisco, networking, NSX, etc. There's, again, a very large list. I'm just going to jump over this, but I wanted to make sure you're all aware of it. Now, OS monitoring. OS monitoring is included in vRops at the advanced level, so it's included in VROI. What does that mean? So vRops itself collects information from vCenter. It collects information around your entire virtual infrastructure. But from the VM perspective, we collect information around the VM container itself. I don't have visibility into the OS unless I leverage something that is pulling the metrics from inside the OS. So now, with the 6.1 release, we have that integrated into vRops. Anybody here use Hyperic? Okay, so some people that use Hyperic, right? So today, with the 6.0, you have to have a separate Hyperic server with the Hyperic agent and then the Hyperic management pack pulling that in. For those of you who have not yet gone to 6.1 or haven't started leveraging the OS monitoring, now you can do it natively in the new vRops, the 6.1 release that you'll see out the door very shortly. So, yes, question? Great question by the gentleman. He said, does the new version of vRops get rid of the need for an agent at the workload itself or just the Hyperic server on the back end? It gets rid of the need for Hyperic server. You still need the agent because we still need something today that is going to give us some of those internal OS metrics. Okay, so this is what you have now integrated as part of VROI at the advanced level without the need for that additional server. You can do it right here. Okay? So the gentleman's asking, what is the upgrade path for that? So there's a couple of ways you can actually do this. So if you are leveraging Hyperic today, the new agent will run alongside Hyperic. So you can have, for example, say I got Windows operating systems, Linux operating systems. I'm running the Hyperic agent. I can run this new OS monitoring agent from vRops 6.1. I can run them at the same time. And then when I'm ready to shut down the Hyperic server or whatnot, I can. The only thing I just want to caution you with, but because those are coming from two different sources, you'll have duplicate objects temporarily. Okay? And then when you do end up shutting down the Hyperic server eventually, you can just clean out and purge those objects. So that's one of the things. But that's essentially how you would go about taking care of that. Now, for those of you who are not using Hyperic or haven't gotten into OS monitoring yet with vRops, it's a non-issue, obviously. Right? Oops, sorry, I skipped over one. Now, more visibility into 6.1, what's coming. If you want to come by the booth, I'm actually at the booth also. Something called Custom Data Center. This is a new construct that we built inside of vRops that can span vCenter objects. And the reason why we built this, let me give you the use cases. A lot of customers said to us, hey, well, we have multiple vCenters, and just the way we segment our environment, we have an SAP cluster here, and we may have another SAP cluster in another vCenter, but when we do capacity management, we want to be able to do it across both of those clusters together. Right? So we had to basically do capacity management against this cluster, capacity management, and then against this cluster. They want to do it against the application as a whole. So this new custom data center construct allows you to group capacity containers like hosts, like clusters, like virtual data centers in these custom data center objects. And these objects, as I mentioned, can span more than one vCenter. So I can take a cluster from this vCenter and a virtual data center from that vCenter, and I say, these make up application XYZ, and I want to do capacity management and capacity planning around it. Okay? And hopefully I can show you an example of that and also the capacity utilization dashboard that I have. Another thing which I just mentioned is in capacity projects in 6.1, we have this new commit. So you could actually commit a project today in 6.0x for those of you who are using it. But we also added two options underneath it. But the default is to reserve the capacity now. So if you say, for example, I need to add 10 VMs next Monday, I want to commit that, we will actually say, okay, this is how much capacity you need for those 10 VMs, so we're actually reserving that capacity now. So again, when you go in capacity remaining, time remaining, when you run your reports around capacity, it's going to take into consideration those capacity reservations. Now, on the flip side of that, you could say, you know what? I know for sure I'm adding 5 hosts next Monday. I know that for sure. They're already racked, they're ready to go. I just got to fire them up. So you can all go in there and say, hey, I'm adding 5 physical hosts, and this is how much capacity they have, and I want to commit it. So it'll also add that capacity or simulate adding that capacity. Because if you were getting alerts or you're low on capacity, you can actually, by doing so, you can say, okay, well, it looks like I got more capacity, so I'm all good. And then the following Monday, you add the capacity and there's no issues. All good. So just wanted to tell you or just highlight that you can add capacity, remove capacity. You can add demand and remove demand. Projects are extremely powerful when you're doing capacity management. I ran into an energy company in Montreal, and they actually had a use case where they want to migrate clusters. They want to take all resources in one cluster and migrate them to another. They want to be able to simulate it, right? Projects allows you to do something like that. I had a customer come to the booth yesterday and talk to me. Well, they have old hosts which they've had for a while, and they want to get rid of them, and these are the new hosts, and they want to be able to simulate, what capacity they have, what capacity they need, how can they go through this methodically. We just sat down and basically generated a couple of projects on how they would remove the host and how they would add additional capacity, and then they can simulate that and visually see it. And we'll take a look at that here in just a little bit. So the gentleman's question was, does it take into account chipset versions and releases? It actually does not. We basically just say, how many CPUs, yeah. Do you have, how much memory are you adding? Now, one thing we do, though, is that if you already have, for example, if you want to add hosts or remove hosts, we have detected what that host is. We've detected its actual CPU demand and allocation and all that. We've detected its memory and its usage, and we have the trends for it. So when you can actually say, I want to add a host, but I want to add a host just like my host number 1 over here. So we'll actually just take that guy's metrics and say, leverage that metrics for the capacity, whether I'm adding or removing in the capacity project. So the gentleman's question was, can I do the same thing on the demand side? So take a number of VMs and do the same thing. And the answer is, yes, you can. So if you take that and you say, just basically, in 6.0, right, right now we're 6.02, okay, and then one that's coming out is 6.1. In 6.02, when you went and did that, you could only select one object. And we're like, guys, no, this doesn't work. We want to be able to do this at scale. Imagine the customer I was dealing with in Montreal, right, who wanted to actually migrate workloads from a cluster A to cluster B, and we have to remove them here, so you got to remove one at a time, right? It was a pain. So, we actually have addressed that. So you could do 5 scenarios in 6.0x and 6.1. You can add a much larger number of scenarios, and you can actually delete or delete one object at a time. Now we basically say, select all the objects you want to delete. We can do them in one scenario for you. So we've enhanced that in the 6.1 release. Now, there's something called custom profiles. In VROps, for those of you who've seen it, we actually end up coming up with sort of virtual machine sizes, if you will, based on your environment. So we look at all the powered-on VMs in your environment, right, and we basically average them across the capacity containers, and we say, this is your average VM. So you'll be able to see them over here. I don't know if everybody can see it, but we have a small profile, a large profile, a medium profile, and an average profile. Right? The medium is just simply the half, the larger and smaller the extremes, and then the average is just a division of the sum of all of them. Now, but customers said to us, well, that's cool. We actually really like that. But we have some of our own custom profiles. We configure SQL Server this way. We configure our Oracle Server this way. We configure this web server in that way. We want to be able to build our own profile. So now you can actually go in and customize and build your own profiles. And I don't know if everybody can see this here, but it says SQL Server Profile. So I've just built my own SQL Server profile. And the UI is saying, hey, in this cluster that I'm looking at, I can fit 3 more based on the criteria that you've defined in this profile. So it's pretty cool. So you can actually go in, build, and customize your own in here. The nice thing about that also, going back to the capacity planning and capacity forecasting, is you can leverage those profiles in projects. So when I'm going to select a machine or select a workload, if I've actually created profiles, I can actually leverage the profiles that I've created. So that, to you, means your own custom profiles. You can select them. Yes, sir? So we do honor that, and I should be able to give you a little bit more detail in just a few moments as well as we get to some of the capacity utilization screens. So just give me a moment if you don't mind. Okay? So here, what we're looking at is a new widget called the capacity utilization widget. In this widget, what we're doing is we're looking at capacity of your environment based on the policies that you've defined, because you all know that based on the policies, you go in and decide what your undersized requirements are, what your oversized, you know, what your buffers are like within your environment, what type of reservations you have, et cetera, et cetera. You decide that in the policies. And then this dashboard essentially shows you visually, hey, on the left-hand side over here, I'm underutilized for these object types. In the middle, this is where I'm, you know, in that optimal range from a capacity perspective. And then on the right-hand side, this is where I'm, you know, really overutilized. That could be at the VM, at the host, at the data store, at the cluster, et cetera, level. So it could be at any of those objects. So what we do is we visually show you that. And you can go in and do this now at that custom data center object level, at the cluster, et cetera. You can go in and visualize that, see that, and then we also have this rebalance feature that Himanshu talked about. So you can go in and say, okay, well, based on what you're telling me here, let's do a rebalance. You tell me how, from a capacity perspective, you would reorganize these workloads. Now, when you go to do that, it looks at admission control, DRS rules, et cetera, and we respect those rules. Okay, so we're not going to violate any of those rules in place. And then we come back and give you a workload plan, a workload balance plan saying, okay, based on how this is running, I recommend this VM go here, that VM go here, da-da-da-da. And you can say, okay, I want to begin this action, and it will go out and actually execute on those actions. Okay? And it will do this across clusters within your vCenters. All right? So the gentleman's question was, does it take into consideration vCPU versus physical CPU counts? And the answer is yes, because when we do our analytics, one of the things that we look at, or one of the badges we look at, is density. And if you've looked at the density badge in detail, and I actually have a blog on that badge specifically and a video on it if you want more detail, but that badge is all about my VM to physical host ratio. So we look at that both at the CPU and memory perspective. Okay? All right, so here I'm just showing that once you have an object, a container object that you selected, under the actions you're going to see this new action button here called Rebalance Container. And again, it's going to look at your capacity utilization, tell you how you're doing, how close you are to optimal, and it's going to help you balance and bring everything into optimal. Again, depending on how you have your policies set up. Okay? So we ask you some of those questions in the new configuration default. Yes, sir?
So in my policy, I can specify what memory metric I want to make decisions based on if I have the criteria agent involved?
Correct. So the gentleman's question is, in my policy, can I specify what type of memory settings I want? Yes. So you actually go in there under capacity remaining and time remaining, and then under usable capacity, there's different settings that you define in there for that. Okay? Now, another action that you're going to see is the ability to move a VM. Right? So I know we have this in the vSphere web client. I know you can do it in the vSphere FAT client. But a lot of customers said, hey, put more actions here as well. Right? We want to be able to do this. So the move action has been added here into VROps as well. And one of the things that we'll do is we'll also make sure that, hey, we're not going to violate any DRS rules as well. Right? So we'll look at that. When you say, hey, move a VM, and you say, I want to move it here, we'll say, this is where it will fit within your environment. You could say, I want to move this VM, I want to move it to this data center, and it'll come back and say, based on the capacity remaining, based on the capacity utilization in your environment, these are the candidates that it will fit on, and then you can select which one you want to move it to. Okay? Again, respecting the affinity rules, the DRS rules. All right, so let's jump into LogInsight. Now, LogInsight 2.0, 2.5, today GA is 2.5. 3.0 is coming here very soon. That was announced yesterday too?
Yeah.
It was,
it's
right?
coming out same time as
right.
6.1.
So you guys are going to see that here, drop GA in the coming days. So we'll just give you a little bit of information around that. Why is LogInsight important to this whole situation, if you will, as Himanshu said? vRops and all those third-party solutions, we're actually pulling in these regular metrics that are coming in all the time. It's structured data. Metrics are structured data. They're coming in all the time in the right format, according to the schema, da-da-da-da-da. Right? We're seeing all that. But what about logs? We get them from operating systems. We get them from physical devices. We get them from vSphere. We get them from vCenter. We get them from vRops itself. Everything generates logs. There is a wealth of information there that is often missed when you're doing troubleshooting. So the idea of the vRealize suite is really to help you complete that loop that Himanshu was talking about, looking at structured and unstructured data and being able to do correlation around that. And so when we actually released LogInsight 2.5, we actually, for those of you who have been using it, you probably see in this, but we actually look at the vSphere ID also. So when we're pulling in information from an object, you see the vSphere ID. You see the vRops ID if that object also is in vRops. So we can do that correlation and help you with that. And then we can also share alerts, and we can do bidirectional launch in context between them. So log analytics is a critical piece to help you as you're doing troubleshooting within your environments. Again, we added roles to make it easier to manage. We have, again, as I mentioned, the cross launch in context between LogInsight and vRops, and you can hopefully see that there where we have the vRops object ID, the VMware object ID. It's not in this screen here, but you have, I'll show you in live, vRops object ID, and then you can see the launch in context between them as well. We also have, and LogInsight also is a cluster model. So it's not a single server. You start with a single server, which today in 2.5 is your master, and then you can have up to 5 different workers within your cluster. Well, now we're actually expanding that even further, and I'll give you more detail in just a moment. We also introduced agents. So on the Windows side, initially, we had to leverage third-party tools to bring in things like Windows events and Windows logs, but we introduced our own LogInsight agent, which we can manage better and allow you some flexibility in configuring those agents across your environment. Well, with 2.5, we also released a Linux native agent as well. Even though on Linux you could say, okay, I just want to forward this stuff to you using syslog, and that's cool. But if you want a little bit more control around configuration of the agent, configuration of the logs, and do some parsing in the logs, leveraging the agent, you want to leverage the LogInsight agent as well, so you can actually do that. We've actually enhanced the UI here significantly, adding more charts and more views, and I'm hoping we can get into some of that. How are we doing here? 10 minutes, oh boy. We introduced the marketplace. So this is one of the things actually I really like about LogInsight, and I'm hoping we'll get there eventually also with vRops, is that the content packs, that third-party integration is right in the product itself. You just simply go to the administration page, you click on Marketplace, and you can see all the content packs right in the UI. And you can say, oh, look at that. Well, we have UCS. Let me select that. Well, we got NetApp. Boom, let me select that. And it simply installs it. And you collect those logs, and now you can visually see all that, and we bubble up and parse all that data and go through all that data for you. Really simplifying how you look at the logs. Because again, there's tons of data there. Physically we can't do it. The tools help us, sift through all that stuff and really bubble up the pertinent information through the dashboards, through the queries, through the alerts, making it simple for us to really leverage. So that's, I'm sorry? Yes, and the gentleman's just pointing out that it also lets you upgrade. So if we actually upgrade any of the content packs, as soon as you go to this page, it'll say, hey, there's an update available for this UCS content pack, right? So you just basically click on it and boom, your upgrade, you're good to go, right? So really simple to use here. Why is my clicker not working anymore? And why is my laptop not working? What's going on? I don't know what's going on here. Forgive me, guys. I don't know what the heck is going on. It seems like it's frozen for no apparent reason. I can do that, but nothing else. But let's see. It looks like I can maybe move into the demo. So forget about slides, right? Who cares about slides, right? Let's just go into demo. All right, so here we are. We're in vRops, right? Here's vRops. We have LogInsight integrated. I got Vin up and running in my environment. I'm doing some OS monitoring. You know what? Whoa, that's what it was. Okay. Don't send. Come back, come back. Here I am. You know what? Again, remember recommendations page. We bubble up all the important information for you so you can see what you need to see. Forgive me for those in the back, but if you'd like to, please come on up. Here, I got some notification events. Let's take a look at that. Well, what this is telling me is I got some, alert here on my vCenter server. Let me click on the details of that. Well, I can see here that this is coming from LogInsight. It's telling me notification event, LogInsight, can't log into my VC. So somebody's trying to log into my VC, it looks like, and they're not able to do this. So now I'm sitting here going, okay, is this just somebody, fat fingering a password, or is this potentially a security issue, right? Is somebody actually trying to do this? Is this happening, more often than not? Let me take a look at my VC object here. Let me go to the VC object and see in vRops, am I seeing this more often or frequently? Is it happening frequently, or is it just sort of a one-time thing, if you will? This is interesting. I'm seeing cannot log in happening often. So again, this kind of just triggers my thought to say, is somebody trying to crack my password here, logging in as administrator, or is, just there's something that's trying to log in and we change the administrator password that we forgot about? What is it? So I can actually go in and actually troubleshoot this further. And the nice thing about from here is I can go in and say actions, open vRealize LogInsight, and it will actually automatically launch me into LogInsight, filter on those logs, and I can start to do some more work against, those logs. Now, let me just come back home for a moment, and we'll jump into LogInsight in just a little bit. But if I go back home, again, we have the health troubleshooting, we have the risk, which is around, risk, compliance risk, but also some capacity risk. Efficiency is where can I actually get rid of some of the waste, right? Large disk snapshots here. It gives you the alert. It gives you the alert, and you can actually take action right from the alert. So here it is, large disk snapshot. I go into the details of that alert, and it says delete the unused snapshot for the VMs. Right? And I just tell it, how far back in days I want to go, and it'll clear it out for me. Similarly, if I go back here, one last one we'll take a look at. Remember, the recommendations page is where we bubble up that really important information for you. So let's take a look here. Virtual machine has chronic high memory leading to memory stress. As soon as you see the word chronic, it means that we've actually been seeing stress for a while, which means it's potentially a sizing issue. Okay, again, you could see that on a host, you could see it on a cluster, you could see it on a VM. In this case, I'm seeing it on a number of VMs. This one has it as immediate, but these ones down here have it as critical. So let me take a look at one of these ones that have it flagged as critical. I can go into the details of that alert, and it's telling me, whoa, I'm way over what I've set in the policy here, and you can see my usage. But I can go in and say, you know what, set the memory. So it's seeing that I have 3 gig of memory here, but it's telling me that, hey, I'm recommending you go to 6400. I may not want to go there right away. I may just go, add 1 gig for now, see what happens, add 2 gig, right? But I can do that. And if it's an operating system that doesn't support hot add, I simply check power off. And by the way, I wouldn't mind snapshotting it before I make that change, just in case. So there's a snapshot button right there. So I can actually do that as well before I actually execute, on this change. Okay? So just showing you here in vRops how we can start to, from the main screen, leverage these alerts and do actionable remediation within the environment. Okay? So, again, other alerts here that you can see and you can dig into more detail. Let's very quickly, though, jump into LogInsight. So here in LogInsight, I'm hoping that some of you are familiar with this. But let's say, we had that VC alert, but I also have I've been seeing some SCSI latency alerts. Okay, so let me just type in here SCSI latency and deteriorated, and I'll do a quick search on that. Okay, oops. I hit enter one too many times. Come on, come on. I did all the sacrifices before I came out here for the live demo, But then PowerPoint decided to crash. Anyway, so let's just jump really quickly back here. SCSI latency. So for those of you who start to use this, you'll start to memorize, some of these terms that you see often in the messages, right? So you can see I'm actually experiencing latency even in the last 5 minutes. But then I can actually go back and say, well, what about in the last hour, right? Oh, look at that. I have these intermittent periods of SCSI latency, right? Well, that's interesting. What host is this happening on? So now I'm just looking at a total event count. But now I can say, you know what? I really wouldn't mind seeing, trying to determine if I can determine which host this is applying on or seeing it. Oh, look at that. It's actually, I'm seeing it on more than one host. ESX01A, 1B, 2A, 2B, the VC, right? So I'm actually seeing some latency happening here. Interesting. Okay, well, what about if I look at it and let's say instead of looking at the count of events, show me the maximum value here. So if I can go in and just group this, and now I can start to see that I'm having these periods of latency within the environment. Well, let's take a look. Can I see it actually and determine the device ID as well? So here's my ESXi device ID. I can select that and say apply that. And now I can see that period, and this is only over a last hour. But I can go back and say, a month, show me, is this happening more often? But now, one of the things that I know you can't see, but it's up here, which is the actual device IDs. So now I can look at those device IDs, and I can go back and look at my storage and say, okay, these are the device IDs. What's going on here? Right? And if I also had something like let's say I had NetApp storage or EMC storage, and I had the corresponding management packs, I can see some of that there. But let's say we really like this query. This is important for me to now look at over the next little while until I address this issue. So let me just add this dashboard to my space. So I just add it to my dashboard 1 here, and I click on add. And now that's saved. I don't actually have to type that ever again ever again. I just simply now go to my dashboard, and I can actually see that information. One last thing from here is, again, if I was doing this and I was a LogInsight guy, not as much as a vRops guy, and if I found that stuff here, I can automatically launch in context to vRops and then go do some additional performance analytics, risk and capacity analytics there as well as part of this. So you can go in and do that. But let me just show you where I actually saved that dashboard to there just a moment ago. So I'll just let this refresh really quickly. I went to dashboard 1. Here it is. That's that query that I just saved. So now I have it. So I can very quickly build my own queries and set them up in my dashboard. So I don't have to go do any searching. Once you have your dashboards, once you have your queries, you're welcome. You can just simply go in and actually see all that information in one spot. Okay? So these are LogInsight queries. You can do things like regular expression as well. So if you know how to do regex, you can do regex queries against the data. Okay, so you can come in and tailor. That one was just a simple query that you do just by typing a few words, typing in and selecting some of the drop-downs where we simplify it for you. But if you want to get into some really custom, unique queries, you can actually get into a regular expression queries as well. So we fully support that. Okay, yes, sir. The gentleman's question was, do we still need to do management packs in 6.1? And the answer is, yes, you do. You still need the management packs, and you have to be at advanced or higher to leverage those. So guys, I know just for those of you who are leaving, thank you very much. Please take the survey. Give us some information, feedback back on the session. But do we continue for a couple of minutes, or are we good? Yeah, come on up. Come on up. Okay, so I just wanted to show here, just hold on for 1 minute, or are you okay? Come to the booth and see me at the booth, okay? Hisham. Yeah, it's right there. Thank you. All right, so I just wanted to show Vin here inside of the vSphere web client for those of you who install Infrastructure Navigator. But if you install the management pack, you can actually see it inside of vRops as well. So here's vRops. Once you install the management pack, you can see I have Vin here. And I can basically click on Vin application topology. It's a small environment that I've created for demo. But you can see here, here's my Spring Trader application. I have a 3-tier application with a web server, an app server, a DB server. And look at that. You can visualize it. I can see the app, which is in the middle. And then I can see each of the VMs that are part of that. And then when I select these VMs, I can get additional, well, the pop-up information, but I actually have additional information here on what's running on it. What are the services that are running on it? So you can see it in the web client, but you can also see it in here as well. Okay? So last thing I just want to show very quickly in 6.1. Okay, so here's another instance that I have, 6.1. I just wanted to show you, I go to this capacity utilization dashboard here. That's that widget I was telling you about. But I have a custom data center object, which is actually grouping clusters from different places into this CDC1 all clusters. And when I select that, it actually shows me that custom data center. And it allows me to see how optimal I am. And as you can see, I'm very overutilized. It's a demo environment. I'm just trying to squeeze the heck out of it so I can show some stuff for these sessions, right? But it's very overutilized. But one of the things that I can do is I can just say, hey, take me to the details of that object, and based on the capacity I have, based on the policies, what can you help me with vRops from a rebalancing of this container from a capacity perspective? It goes out, it analyzes, and it comes back and says, okay, well, I'm obviously running out of capacity, but it can enhance it a little bit by moving these 3 VMs for me and try to get me closer to the optimal, even though I'm really strapped in that environment for capacity. But it can help me by moving these, and I can just simply select begin action, and it'll help you with that capacity utilization. So I'll leave it at that. So thank you very much. Please give us some feedback in the survey, and come see us at the booth if you have time. We'd love to chat more detail around all this stuff. So thank you again for your time. Thank you.